So the next issue, the next article I wanted to cover here is a piece from it's from Fox News. Unsurprisingly, it's a negative piece, and this piece is written by somebody named Mary Ann Marsh. So this person has been on Fox News for a very long time. They've been a Democratic strategist and political analyst. So I think they were strategists before, and then they become a political analyst on Fox. I think they've been on Fox for I don't know how many years now. I would say probably 15, 20 years possibly. So they've been around for a minute on obviously the most right-wing network, basically, in the country. But and a lot of the people that are, so a lot of the so-called Democrats, kind of the Democratic loyalists that are on Fox or have been on Fox, have always been, and they have always been pro-establishment. They've always been anti-radical, far leftists. So, and even more in today's age, which is very ironic because, you see a lot of, it's so weird too, because, you see, what is it, Elizabeth Warren and, a couple of other, people, Neera Tanden. Elizabeth Warren's only, I believe she's the only Democrat running that has refused to go on Fox News as far as doing town halls and stuff. Bernie Sanders did one. I think Amy Klobuchar did one, and Pete Buttigieg did one, I think. But what I was going to say is that it's just ironic how all these people are against Fox News and doing town halls on them, but then they have Democrats that work for them, and they've had Democrats working for them for a long time. So Mary Ann Marsh is one of them, and this article is titled Bernie Sanders' incredible shrinking candidacy, why he won't be Dem nominee. So this article is from, I believe, May 20th, I think 19th or 20th. So let's start off here and read from the beginning. It says, in 2016, Bernie Sanders was a force in Democratic politics, challenging Hillary Clinton for the Democratic nomination in a bitter and hard-fought contest. Sanders is running again for the Democratic nomination and finds himself mired in second place and sinking. Oh my God. Today, he sees Joe Biden in front of him in first place and looks over his shoulder at Elizabeth Warren, who's gaining on him every day. It says the same guy who beat Hillary Clinton in the 2016 New Hampshire primary by 22 points is currently polling at 18% there, while Joe Biden is in first place with double the support at 36% in the latest Monmouth poll in early May. So what changed? It says, so what changed? Everything and nothing. Okay. It says the fact is Bernie Sanders is the same candidate as he was in 2016. How dare he? He needs to change with the times. Why isn't he selling out more, right? And then he says that's the problem. He has all the same problems today that he had in the last race. Problems that were either never exposed then or were overlooked. Sanders' problems with women, voters of color, and Clinton supporters are all still there. They just happen to be on full display now, which in the current political environment means they're even worse. So I don't know what this person is, just like the last article I read about the Jeffrey Sonnenfeld or whatever that was shilling for Joe Biden. I have no idea what this person is talking about. A lot of this is just repeating the same bullshit talking points you hear from you hear from the likes of the typical Democratic establishment types and the people that don't want Bernie Sanders to get in this race or be in this race and change the narrative and push for progressive ideas. And this person is masking it as him being hated by women, hated by people of color. And okay, I mean, if he's hated by Clinton supporters, I wouldn't be surprised by that. I've never heard of anybody referring to that. But the Clinton supporters, I guarantee you, are not going to be the 65 million people that voted for Hillary Clinton in 2016. So referring to Clinton supporters, I don't even know what that says. I mean, that just means, if you think about it, Hillary Clinton supporters didn't even 24% or so of Clinton supporters didn't even support Barack Obama in 2008. And then apparently there was like, I think 8%, was it 8% of, was it 8? I think 8% of Hillary supporters that hate Bernie Sanders, I think that for some reason, I think that's a figure that I have that has kind of been floating around among progressive circles, but I'm going to have to look up on that. But all I can tell you is that I guarantee the number of the percentage of Hillary supporters that hate Bernie Sanders is not a huge number. And if it is, a lot of them may just like they might just be like the types that are gonna be like, okay, well, I don't love Bernie Sanders, but if Bernie Sanders, let's say, was the nominee, I would vote for him. But is it like, are a majority of Clinton supporters out there, Hillary Clinton supporters out there, do they hate, Bernie Sanders? I don't know. I would be surprised if that was the case. I don't know. Again, I don't know what this person is referring to. They don't reference a poll or anything when they refer to the Clinton supporters. And my feeling is this person is just referring to the Clinton supporters because she's a Clinton supporter and she obviously can't stand Bernie Sanders. You'll notice that she obviously can't stand him once we finish go through this article and get to the end of this article and see what they're saying. But I think she's just mirroring what her views are, and she's pretending as if it's a fact. But no, the women and voters of color, that's bullshit. That all the claims that he doesn't have support among women and voters of color is completely baseless. That's based on nothing. Poll after poll has shown that both those demographics support Bernie Sanders. So they're just making things up, just like that Jeffrey Sonnenfeld guy was doing, shilling for Joe Biden. This person is shilling for anybody but Bernie, essentially. So the next paragraph here says a number of positions Sanders advocated in the last race are shared by many of the candidates in this race. That's an argument made by many people, by the way. So it's just another bullshit argument where they pretend like Bernie, just because all the other candidates say they support what Bernie Sanders supports, that means Bernie is exactly like them. Okay, so it says that means he doesn't stand out in stark contrast anymore. He's just one more candidate. Add to the fact that after 30 years in Congress, Sanders has passed only 1.8% of the legislation he's introduced. That's right, 1.8%. And the crusading campaign he had led last time around looks like an inability to get anything done today. Again, this person is repeating the same fucking bullshit that last guy that I just referred to was saying, talking about how it's just grandstanding and he's just pushing for things that pushing for things to get attention, and the things that he pushes for now everybody else supports it too. Yeah, so the Medicare for all that Bernie Sanders supports, yes, it got embraced, and he got support. The Bernie Sanders legislation that Bernie pushed for in the Senate, it got co-sponsored by, I think it was, 10 or 15 or 16, I think, other senators, Democratic senators. That doesn't automatically mean that all those people support exactly what Bernie Sanders supports. That just means that Bernie Sanders pressured these people to support the legislation that he's supporting and that he's pushing for, and he just managed to twist enough arms to get them to co-sponsor. But that doesn't mean they are pushing for it. That doesn't mean they're going to go out there and say, oh yeah, I totally support Medicare for all. I totally support reforming the healthcare system. Yeah, they support reforming it, and then in regard of like Obamacare, basically, which is almost nothing. So that's not much of a reform. Again, like I said, Obamacare is a former bill, or is a piece of legislation that was pushed by Richard Nixon. It was pushed by the Heritage Foundation, which is a conservative group. So when Bernie Sanders goes and pushes for Medicare for all, he pushes for free college, he pushes for a living wage. These are not things that the Democratic Party supports. So acting as if all of a sudden Bernie is the same as all these other people, it's totally made up. That is not reality at all. So, I mean, again, it just seems like another person that wants to co-opt and grift off of Bernie Sanders' ideas, kind of, sort of, in a way. But pretend as if like whatever Bernie believes, that's what the Democratic Party believes too. When in reality they don't. And at the same time, these are the kind of people that want to talk about how Bernie's a radical, even though supposedly all of the policies that he supports are the ones that Democrats support. But he's really radical. Don't worry, he's not going to make it because he's really radical. But everybody supports everything he wants to do. So which one is it? These people can't make up their minds. Their talking points just like they constantly contradict each other. So, regarding the claim that Mary Ann Marsh says about how, so it says Bernie Sanders, when was it 30 years in Congress? I'm assuming they're referring to Congress and Senate. It says he's only passed 1.8% of the legislation he's introduced. So I want to make 2 points about that. The reason why majority of Bernie Sanders' legislation is not approved is because Bernie Sanders is pushing for legislation, he's pushing for policies that the establishment does not want. So he's pushing for things that a lot of the Democrats, they are so compromised on those policies that they're just like, well, I don't want those things. I don't like those things. I don't agree with those. I might agree with them to some point, but at the level that Bernie Sanders is doing it, it's too radical for me. So I can't do that. I can't stand that. So, it's a lot of it is just like, again, they're not getting into the meat of the details. They're not getting into the specifics of talking about why this is the case. Why 1.8% of the legislation that Bernie has introduced has passed. So, it's in reality. So that takes me to my second point. In reality, Bernie Sanders in the past has, for what was it? So from 1995 to 2007, this is according to a PolitiFact article. I'll link this in my description below. But according to this PolitiFact article, this is an article that's been spread around a lot by Bernie supporters, such as myself. And PolitiFact isn't exactly like it's not a progressive. It's definitely not a progressive, publication. It's just a random, regular fact-checking website. And it says from 1995 to 2007. The total amendments passed by Bernie Sanders is 49 in 1995. So first of all, let me read the article. It's here. It says Bernie Sanders was the roll call amendment king from 1995 to 2007. So that means that. So let me just read this here. 1 second. It says, out of 419 amendments Sanders sponsored over his 25 years in Congress, and this article, by the way, is from 2016, so it's a little bit dated, but it's still relevant. It says Sanders sponsored out of the 419 amendments Sanders sponsored over his 25 years in Congress, 90 passed, 21 of them by roll call votes. Here's a breakdown, and then it shows a breakdown of how Bernie Sanders passed total of 49 amendments between 1995 and 2007, and 17 of them were passed by a roll call vote. And from 2007 to 2015, and that was 2006. So after 2006, so I think it was 2007 on, he was elected to the Senate. So when Bernie Sanders joined the Senate, let's see, 37 amendments were passed. 37 of his amendments were passed, and then 3 were done by roll call vote. So obviously got a lot less when he got into the Senate. 2015 to present, so 2015 to 2016, 4 amendments, 4 total amendments passed, 1 by roll call vote, again in the Senate. So what I was going to say is that contrary to what Mary Ann Marsh person is saying, she's saying, so now I don't know if percentage-wise, I don't know that 1.8% could be correct. I'm not really sure. I haven't done the math. But when you portrayed in that 1.8%, okay, yeah, that's really low. But if you want to, again, if you want to get into the details, Bernie Sanders has been the amendment king before. He has, from 1995 to 2007, which is 6 straight terms. That's 12 years, 6 straight terms, because every term is obviously 2 years. He has been the amendment king. So for a 12-year period to pass the most number of amendments, and to be called the amendment king, obviously you're doing something right. So it's not just, yes, he's pushed for legislation that, a lot of the people in, obviously in Congress, so during the time that he was in Congress, which is when these, he was the amendment king. A lot of them, yeah, okay. A lot of his fellow congressmen and congresswomen did not support his policies, majority of the time. But he still did pass the most amendments within that period. And obviously, this either Mary Ann Marsh doesn't know that, or she doesn't want to acknowledge it, or she's just, she just doesn't want to, obviously, she doesn't want to. What I think is she doesn't want to give credit where it's due, and she just wants to detail it down to a percentage to make it seem as if it's really, as if it's really insignificant. So it's typical of these, as I've covered multiple times before. It's just typical of these, establishment outlets and. The articles that are written in those outlets, it's just cherry picking stuff, right? So like you're going to go out there and say, oh yeah, this tiny percentage, less than 2% of the legislation that Bernie Sanders has introduced has been passed, whereas the rest of the 98% apparently, according to this person, has been ignored and not ignored, but has been essentially not supported. So yeah. Typical just bullshit argument there. And then the next paragraph says the latest Fox News poll, which, yeah, I'm really going to trust what Fox News is going to say in their polls. But anyway, it says the latest Fox News poll lays bare Sanders' woes. Among Democratic primary voters, Sanders has dropped 6 points since March, placing him in a distant second place at 17%. 17% behind Biden, who is at 35%, up 4 points since the previous poll in March. The same poll shows Warren up 5 points to 9%, doubling her support during the same period. I don't know what this is. It says Trump wants to run against Sanders. His tweets is this her saying that? Yeah, no, I don't know. I guess it's the same person saying that. Mary Ann Marsh lady says Trump wants to run against Sanders. His tweets encouraging Sanders and bemoaning the rigged Democratic primary of 2016, while he denigrates Biden and Warren candidates he doesn't want to run against, tells you everything. Why would? Yeah, well, obviously that's based on nothing. Again, just more bullshit. So I mean, honestly, at the end of the day, if Trump is dumb enough to think that he can run against a politician who's running on policies that majority of the people in this country support, then he's just an idiot. Like this person is taking Trump's word for the fact, like, oh yeah, I don't want to run against Biden and Warren. So I mean, so you're just believing what Trump thinks, like as if Trump is an expert on who he knows he can beat. Trump lost to Hillary Clinton. He lost the popular vote to Hillary Clinton. So obviously he was less popular than Hillary Clinton among voters in this country. But then all of a sudden you're going to believe when he says that he wants. So you're going to believe that when he talks about, the rigged primary, and then says, and then I guess in Mary Ann Marsh's mind, that he is trying to let you know that he doesn't want to run against Biden and Warren, but he wants to run against Bernie. So have you ever considered the fact that he's completely wrong and he's delusional? No, apparently not. Apparently Trump is not delusional and crazy when you agree with what he says. That's very convenient. So the next paragraph here says, the poll also reveals that the number one priority for Democratic primary voters is defeating Donald Trump. Overall, 73% of Democratic primary voters feel that it is extremely important to beat Trump. Among women, 77% say beating Trump is extremely important to defeat him. For Democratic women, that climbs to 80%, and for voters of color, it is 75%. And that's the problem for Sanders. More specifically, women, voters of color, and Clinton supporters are his problem. Only 15% of women support Sanders in the poll. Only 14% of minority voters support him, and only 16% of Clinton voters. Only 60% Clinton voters. It says more bad news among the category of voters who are the most interested and the most invested in the 2020 election are Clinton supporters at 64%. Okay, so this is based on your brilliant Fox News poll over here, which I guaranteed is skewed to go against Sanders, because obviously the people are the people that are working for the right-wing network are not going to want Bernie Sanders to gain any kind of popularity. They're just going to bash him all the time. Now you can say that, okay, well, I read an article from Politico was talking about how Republicans would love to run against Bernie Sanders, but there's other politicians who also believe, I believe one of them was Ted Cruz, who believe that Sanders is a real threat. So apparently, unless Ted Cruz is lying, I don't know. I don't know how much I would believe Ted Cruz and how much I would think that he's being sincere in what he's saying. But at the same time, if you want to take Trump seriously, then you got to take Cruz seriously too. Now, I don't take either one of them seriously. But I don't really care what Cruz says. I don't really care what Trump says. So if they say, well, I can beat Crazy Bernie, or Crazy Bernie is not going to get anywhere, that's fine. That's your opinion. At the end of the day, you have to look at what policies Bernie Sanders supports. And, Mary Ann Marsh can pull out any poll she wants, way before we even have a debate, way before, majority of Americans know what Bernie Sanders is pushing for. When Bernie Sanders lays out specific policies that he supports, such as the usual Medicare for all, free college, a living wage, ending the wars, if you ask people where do they stand on those issues, they support those issues. And Bernie Sanders is pushing for those issues more than anybody. No other candidate is pushing for those policies. So when Mary Ann Marsh said earlier in the article, Bernie Sanders' ideas are not unique anymore because all the other Democratic candidates agree with him too. Yeah, but they're not pushing for those policies as hard as he is. I already mentioned that before. That's obvious. Everybody knows that. Nobody out there, what Democrat other than Bernie Sanders, maybe other than Bernie Sanders and Tulsi Gabbard, and to some extent Elizabeth Warren, what presidential candidate is going out there and talking about how we need to have Medicare for all, how we have to have tuition-free college, how we have to have a living wage, which is way above a $15 minimum wage, by the way, which Bernie Sanders got for Disney workers and Amazon workers. He's pushing for even more than that. So $15 minimum wage is just the start. Ending the wars and stuff. Now, when it comes to like Wall Street reform and stuff, obviously Bernie Sanders supports that too. But you could make the case that Elizabeth Warren supports that because she seems to be kind of like that. Seems to be more of her calling in the sense that Warren seems to be more kind of in the camp of like focusing mainly on going after Wall Street, but that doesn't mean Bernie Sanders doesn't. Bernie Sanders has been doing that just as much, if not more, than Elizabeth Warren. It just so happens that Warren goes after it more, whereas Bernie Sanders, he focuses on a wide array of issues. In the 2016 primaries, people claimed that Bernie was just a one-issue guy. That's not true at all. They claimed that he was just going after Wall Street all the time. That's bullshit because he was always pushing for Medicare for all. He was always pushing for tuition-free college, Wall Street reform, ending the wars, all that stuff. He was always pushing for those things. So people that claim that it's bullshit. But So, but this Marianne Marsh person, they can talk all about these polls, then all these, what all these polls and shit say. But at the end of the day, first of all, we haven't even had a debate yet. Second of all, when you again, when you go into the specific politicians that are pushing for these things, Bernie is one of the only guys that's doing it. Bernie, Tulsi, and again, Elizabeth Warren to some extent, Mike Gravel to another extent. So, but Bernie Sanders is the main guy and the most popular guy pushing for these things. So if you were to put Bernie Sanders into a debate, against all these other, I don't know how many candidates are going to be able to be on one stage in the Democratic debates, but if you put him on that stage, he is going to stand out from all of them when it comes to pushing for these specific policies, and he's going to be known for pushing for that. So when this person says, this Marianne Marsh person says, Bernie hasn't changed from the last stuff that he's pushed for, from 2016, nothing has changed, but then everything has changed, which makes that, I don't know, that makes no sense. But anyway, but when they say that, Bernie isn't one to change. When it comes to the change of when it comes to changing on, the policies that he believes in and the policies that he's advocating for, those are the things that he believes in, and he's going to keep pushing for those. So what do you want him to do? Is he supposed to go out there and is he supposed to talk about how, my position has changed on how I don't want Medicare for all to exist? No. Of course he's not. Is his mind going to change, when it comes to things, regarding tuition-free college, regarding Wall Street reform, ending the wars, minimum, living wage and stuff? Of course not. So, but I don't know. Like this person, they want to reference this Fox News poll and talk about how Clinton voters don't support them. But then it says among the category of voters who are the most interested and the most invested in the 2020 election are Clinton supporters at 64%. So, okay, so it says 60% of Clinton voters supported Bernie Sanders. Okay, so again, this is a Fox News poll. This is one poll that you decided to choose that happened to be from your employer who you've been working for, I don't know, 15, 20 years now. You've been at that network forever. No other network you've been part of. I guarantee you those polls are not going to say the same exact thing. So you obviously just decided to pick out a poll that says decided to pick out a poll that kind of fits your narrative. Just like the other article that I was covering was doing the same exact thing. Just cherry picking specific polls and specific numbers that cater to your message. And so it says here, the next paragraph says Sanders' problem from 2016 have followed him to the 2020 campaign, and it is too late to fix them. Oh my God, he's in trouble, huh? It is too late for him to win over women, minority, and Clinton voters. Then add the fact that there are so many other choices in the Democratic primary that do have the support of those voters, and they won't have to settle for less in 2020. The gains by other candidates are coming at Sanders' expense. So that's just repeating the same narrative, talking about how he's not liked by women, how he's not liked by minorities, how he's not liked by Clinton voters. So, let me pull up this poll real quick. 1 second. So there's this Harvard-Harris poll that was taken, I believe, in 2017. I believe it was, or 2017. So it's a little bit dated, but it doesn't mean you can't use it. It doesn't mean it's not relevant. So they asked, let me read you what it says here. It says, approval ratings across demographics. Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders is the country's most popular active politician, viewed favorably by 57% of voters according to a new poll. So this is from May 2017. And it says 58% popularity among women, 55% popularity among men, 62% popularity among 18 to 34, which is millennials, 73% popularity among African Americans, 68% popularity among Hispanics, 62% popularity among Asian Americans, 52% popularity among whites, and 80% among Democrats as a whole. So all of that apparently averages out to 57%. So let's look into a couple things here. 55% and 52%. Those two approvals are the lowest that Bernie Sanders. Those are two demographics that Bernie Sanders has the lowest among, according to this poll. Those two categories are men and whites. Now, women is 58%. So that's somewhat low. Obviously it could be higher, but it's still a majority of women. And it's still a majority of men, and it's still a majority of whites. But the fact that the whites and the whites overall and men is the lowest, what happened to the whole narrative about Bernie Sanders not being supported by women? What happened to the narrative that he's not liked by people of color? And again, so the people of color is, if you go, let's say, if you want to go among African Americans, Hispanics, and Asians, it's 73%, 68%, and 62%, respectively. So Bernie Sanders is perfectly liked by three minority demographic groups. He is not liked by the majority demographic group in this country, which is white people. He is largely disliked by not disliked, but he's least liked as far as between men and women. He's less liked by men, more liked by women. So, and he's the most liked. Well, if you don't want to count Democrats are 80%. It's not surprising that the 80% of Democrats would like Bernie Sanders. But 73% of African Americans support Bernie Sanders. So, again, now this is the thing. When it comes to polls, I'm not going to be a hypocrite and say, well, Marianne Marsh or whoever, these people that are referencing these polls, they're cherry picking polls. I'm not going to cherry pick polls. I'm not going to be talking about how this poll's right and that poll's right. But if you want to compare where the polls are coming from, and B, how the polls are, and how the polling, especially the polling questions, how they're phrased, how they ask the questions, stuff, that's very important. So that's stuff that you're not hearing from Marianne Marsh, who's just talking about how, the Fox News poll talks about how Hillary Clinton supporters hate Bernie Sanders and they are the most interested and most invested in the election. Okay, so, sorry, but I can't really take a Fox News poll seriously. And again, when referencing all, women, minorities, and Clinton voters, okay, fine. Clinton voters don't like Hillary Clinton, don't like Bernie Sanders. How many Clinton supporters are there out there? The thing is, Hillary Clinton is one of the least liked and least respected and least popular politicians. I think it was on election day, I think she may have been more. So on election day in 2016, I think she was actually just as, if not more unpopular than Donald Trump on election day, and then she ended up losing. But her popularity was horrible. It was so bad in 2016, leading up to the election, that that's why people were so worried about her losing, and she ended up losing. And she ended up losing to somebody that was more, if not just as unpopular as her. So when you're talking about how, the Hillary Clinton supporters are very invested in this election and they really hate Bernie Sanders, I don't think I'm too worried about the small minority of Hillary Clinton supporters. And again, that's not 65 million of them that voted for her. I guarantee you, out of those 65 million, I guarantee at least 60% of those 65 million voters that voted for Hillary Clinton, at least 60%. Voted for her just because they didn't want to vote for Trump. So they voted for her just to go against Trump. So just to oppose Trump. So it wasn't like, I'm stronger together with Hillary Clinton and, I want to be with her and still with her or whatever I'm with her or whatever her slogan was, her hashtag was. They weren't thinking like that. 65 million people were not voting for Hillary Clinton because they love Hillary Clinton. A majority of them are guaranteed couldn't stand her, especially the more she opened her mouth. And I predict that same thing is going to happen to Joe Biden. I predict to some extent, I think the same thing might happen to Elizabeth Warren. We'll see what happens with that. But I would rather have Elizabeth Warren, in the race against Bernie than Joe Biden, because I think Warren can add a lot more to the conversation when it comes to actual substantive debate and actual real issues compared to Joe Biden, who's just horrible. But yeah, but like, again, women and minority voters are perfectly fine with Bernie Sanders, as I detailed in that poll. If you want to take that poll seriously, I'm going to post it for you guys. But if you want to take that poll seriously, that's up to you. But that's, would I trust this poll over a Fox News poll? Of course, because Fox News, who trusts anything that Fox News puts out? Granted, Bernie Sanders did do he did do a town hall, on Fox News, and then got, an applause for, mentioning Medicare for all, and then, people really love that and stuff. But I think that was just like, I don't think that, I definitely don't think that audience, kind of represents the entire Fox News audience. I think majority of them are not going to be able to stand Bernie, but that's fine because that's not surprising. But the point is that, again, as usual, these people just want to put out these conspiracy theories and all these baseless claims and false narratives about Bernie Sanders, which are bullshit, and it's just, a lot of it is just anti-Bernie narrative. That's all it really is. It's just this anti-Bernie sentiment because he dares to be too radical or too far left. So that's really their main issue. So let me read the rest of the article here. It says, the very voters who do not support Sanders now were the most powerful force in the Democratic Party's gains in 2018. Women, minorities, and Clinton supporters. Again, repeating the same shit. And they will be again in 2020. They remember Sanders' claim that 2016 primary was rigged, sounding more like Trump than Trump. Okay. And despite the fact that Clinton would have beaten Sanders in any delegate combination you could create, including no superdelegates, that didn't stop him from playing the victim. Talk about playing the victim. The Democratic Party was the one playing the victim the entire time. The entire time Bernie Sanders was, Hillary Clinton was playing the victim every time he went after her. Democratic Party played the victim every time he criticized Democrats for their fucking pro-war votes and, pro-Wall Street votes. And the claim here, it says that they remember Sanders' claim that when it comes to Bernie Sanders' claim that the 2016 primary was rigged, Bernie didn't talk about that very much. I don't know if a lot of people remember him talking about it. They may have. I don't know. I can't even remember the last time he talked about that. So, and I'm a Bernie supporter, and I'm not ignoring it because I do believe the primary was rigged. But when it comes to Bernie himself, I don't really remember him talking about that very much. So, and it's not like Marianne Marsh is detailing a specific time when he did refer to the primary being rigged. In fact, a lot of Bernie supporters take Bernie to task for not calling out the Democrats more for rigging the primary. So I don't know what she's just fucking making something up over here. As usual, as she's doing in this entire piece. It says, next paragraph says, these voters also remember that Sanders fought Clinton all the way to the convention, during the convention, and after the convention. They remember it took a meeting with Barack Obama at the White House to get Sanders to drop out of the race long after it was over. They remember Sanders didn't support Clinton in the general election against Trump? What? Hold on. They remember Sanders didn't support Clinton in the general election against Trump. Oh my God. It says they remember Sanders paid women on his campaign less than their male counterparts and didn't address their claims of mistreatment until it became public, and even then he did a poor job addressing it. Dude, you are a fucking hack. This specific part of this paragraph is so fucking, oh my God, that is maddening. Listen, I didn't support the fact that Bernie backed Hillary Clinton in the general election, but that is a complete lie. It is well documented that Bernie Sanders supported Hillary Clinton in the general election against Trump. What the fuck are you talking about? Now, whether people, and she's referring to like Clinton supporters, essentially, like anti-Bernie, Dem loyalist Clinton supporters. If that's what they remember, then you're just pushing a lie. You're just Mary Ann Marsh over here, this fucking liar. Obviously, that's not by accident. She's lying, outright lying, and she knows it. She's pushing the fact that she's pushing this lie. She's trying. So obviously, she knows that Bernie Sanders advocated for this, but a lot of people advocated for Hillary Clinton to, in the election, preferred her over Trump. That is a verifiable fact. Everybody knows that to be a fact. So this claim is it's a lie. But do a lot of people remember, and that referring to the Dem loyalists, anti-Bernie Clinton supporters, do they remember that Bernie didn't support Hillary Clinton? Yeah, probably, because they're idiots and because they believe lies. So they're not going to support they're not going to support actual facts. So obviously they would go out there, yeah, Bernie, yeah, he never supported Hillary Clinton, even though Bernie Sanders did 41 events all across the country for Hillary Clinton. 40 events. He went out there, he stuck his neck out for her, which, again, I don't believe he should have done it, but he did, and that's fine. But he did that for her, and this idiot, this Mary Ann Marsh lady has the fucking gall to lie about how he didn't even support Hillary Clinton in the general election. That's just unfathomable. How can you put out a lie like that? But it's Fox News. What do you expect, right? FoxNews.com even lets their Democratic strategists, their horrible, shitty Democratic strategists, who are probably just as bad as, if not worse than, the Democratic strategists on CNN and MSNBC. So I can't imagine them being much worse than the ones on those channels. But apparently they're even worse on Fox News too. And then it says they remember Sanders paid women on his campaign less than their male counterparts and didn't address their claims of mistreatment until it became public. And even then he did a poor job addressing it. Dude, there were people on many campaigns that weren't treated correct. There was so I covered a story, I think it was from last year, I believe it was. And it was an article about how Hillary Clinton shielded her faith advisor. So a guy that was advising her on faith. Apparently Hillary Clinton is a super religious person. But her faith advisor was actually caught sexually harassing a member of her campaign, a woman that was working for her campaign. It might have been multiple women, but it was at least one woman. That this creepy looking guy, and I remember the article, it's from New York Times, they covered it. He was sexually harassing somebody on the Hillary Clinton campaign. What did Hillary do? Not only did she not address it, but she actually shielded the guy from being fired. Like she refused to fire him. She ignored the fact that this happened to this woman that worked for her, protected this fucking pervert, protected this creep, and didn't say shit. And then I don't know, later on they asked her, "Oh, I regret not firing him sooner." Okay, well, that's very convenient to say that later on. But yeah, she got caught for that though. But you're talking about how Bernie Sanders didn't address mistreatment. He addressed the mistreatment, following. So he addressed the mistreatment. I think it was in January, I believe it was. I also covered that at one. I think I covered that. I don't think I covered it on video or anything. I don't think I did a segment about it, but I definitely wrote about it on my one of my Facebook posts on my Facebook page. But I detailed how he, and the articles that were put out detailed how now the way they were framing it was just baseless, because they were a lot of the articles that were talking about how Bernie Sanders addressed these, sexual assault allegations against these, so by the people. So men that were in his camp, that were working for his campaign all across the country. There were there were men that were sexually harassing certain women. He never knew. First of all, not only did he never know about it because he was never informed, but when he did end up addressing it, he addressed it before his campaign, before he even decided to run in 2020. So I think he addressed it like I said, in January. And in fact, when he addressed it, he was criticized for not attending a vote to, I think it was like so it was like a vote to like put sanctions on Russia or something Russiagate related, and like people were so angry. How could you miss this vote that was gonna sanction Russia up the ass even more? And then it turns out the fact that he didn't. So like he was basically like. He voted, I think, present or something on the vote because he decided to spend that time to go and meet with the victims that were accused of sexual assault, and the people that came. So the people that did come out, and so I think there was one article that was written. I believe it might have been in the Intercept, I think, and there was an article that was from that was put out there, and it was one of the first articles that was put out regarding. Women that were sexually assaulted on his campaign, and this woman was like, "Listen, I don't want this, I don't want this article or my accusations against the Bernie Sanders campaign to be used as a kind of like a political football to attack Bernie Sanders and act as if this is something Bernie Sanders." Did wrong or something that he neglected. I don't want it to look like that because that's not the case. I don't believe that Bernie Sanders maliciously ignored, what women on this campaign were going through, and I don't think that he ignored it and stuff. But this is what they're doing. But that's exactly what they do. So like Marianne Marsh obviously has a political agenda to smear Bernie Sanders, and she's a Democratic operative or political consultant or whatever Democratic Party. She has a vested interest to smear Bernie Sanders, and she goes and puts out this lie regarding about how Bernie didn't support Hillary Clinton in the general election. It's complete bullshit. Says he didn't didn't address the claims of mistreatment, which he did, and then claims he addressed it poorly, even though people that say that he didn't the people that say that he didn't decide to take part in a vote for sanctioning Russia, he actually abstained from that vote to go and meet with the victims of sexual assault. And then people were the people that were their concerns that were kind of met. They were happy with it. They were satisfied with the way that he addressed them. Again, Hillary Clinton refused to even acknowledge the fact that somebody was sexually assaulted on her campaign, and then shielded that person, the sexual assaulter, from even being fired because she wanted to keep her faith as advisor for some reason. There was another case where Kamala Harris, when she was Attorney General, was it Attorney General or Senator? I think it might have been Senator. Hold on one second. Just want to look up this article. I want to get this right. Yeah. So it says so. The specific thing that happened was there was an aide to Kamala Harris that resigned from her. Yeah, so it was from her Senate. Yeah, so it was from when she was a senator. So when she was a senator, he was one of her closest advisors, apparently, Larry Wallace. Yeah, a top aide to Harris in her Senate office in Sacramento. He settled a sexual harassment lawsuit for $400,000, and Harris's campaign claims, we didn't know about it and we didn't hear about it, and we had no idea what was going on. And so, but only after he settled the lawsuit, he resigned. So after the lawsuit was settled and $400,000 was essentially was, I guess, paid off, or yeah. So after it maybe not so much paid off, but after it was kind of disclosed that this guy owes $400,000 for his sexual harassment and apparently a retaliation settlement. So after he did that, that's when he resigned. So not even after the sexual harassment came out. So apparently the sexual harassment happened, it came out, it was disclosed, and he still was her advisor. And she claims that she didn't know about it. So how's that possible? How do you not know about that? So until after the $400,000 stuff comes out, then you decide to resign. So how convenient for one of her advisors to decide to resign after that part of the story comes out about how he has to pay $400,000 Has Marianne Marsh, have any Democrats ever talked about this? No. I haven't seen anything. I haven't seen any Democrats talk about how Kamala Harris should be condemned for not handling sexual harassment on her not her campaign, but on her in her office. It's a campaign is completely different. So as I was saying before, Bernie Sanders was unaware of what was going on regarding sexual harassment on his campaign, because his campaign is going on all across the country. So he has campaign people in 50 different states, most likely, in probably every single state. So how is he able to address something going on in a state campaign office or going on in a campaign when he's not even aware of it, because it's going on in different parts of the country? Whereas in this case with Kamala Harris and in the case of Hillary Clinton, these are people that were close to them, and they either shielded them or they didn't know about it. That says a hell of a lot more about those people than it does about Bernie Sanders, who addressed those concerns and was told that the way he addressed them was correct, even though the media claims that they kind of framed the way the media articles kind of framed the whole kind of sexual harassment in Bernie Sanders' campaign. They frame it as if he kind of ignored it and acted like it didn't happen. Not that it didn't happen, but that he didn't know about it, and they pretend as if that's the case. But then, if you read more into the article, you read past the headline and past the first few paragraphs, you go into like the 16th fucking paragraph, then you find out, oh no, he actually did not know about it because he wasn't made aware, and he decided to sit down with the people and sit down with these women and talk about the issue with them and address it, and made sure that they were satisfied with the meeting and satisfied with the fact that he's showing that he cares, and he did that, obviously, contrary to what this idiot is saying, Marianne Marsh lady. So let me just continue so I can finish the rest of the article here. It says, they remember Sanders isn't a Democrat. They remember Sanders saying he doesn't think voters should consider a candidate's gender, race, sexual orientation, or support for abortion when determining their support for them. That thing about abortion, he never said that. He never said anything about not supporting somebody because they support abortion. What Bernie Sanders said regarding abortion was he went after Planned Parenthood because they chose to support him. They chose to support Hillary Clinton over him because they were making a political move because they wanted to support Hillary Clinton, for essentially because of the fact that they are kind of in cahoots with her, essentially, because I think it was a member of Hillary's, like a member of her family or something, works for Planned Parenthood, or somebody in Planned Parenthood works for her, or something like that. There was just somebody was aligned with her in some way, and it was just convenient that they just happened to support her, even though Bernie Sanders' record on abortion is just as good as Hillary Clinton, if not better. And he's gone on record supporting abortion, reproductive rights. He supports, late-term abortion, all that stuff. Whereas Hillary Clinton has had a record of supporting a ban on abortions after a certain period of time, and then, has been willing to like sell out supporters of basically pro-choice supporters, essentially, because because she wants to compromise with the other side. Let me see here. It says, so yeah, that's really the thick of what Marianne Marsh is saying regarding abortion. Again, she's not going into detail. She's just talking about cherry picking specific things. Bernie Sanders did say you shouldn't choose a candidate based on gender, sexual orientation, or race. Yeah, he said that. That's fine. What's wrong with that? Because at the end of the day, if you're choosing somebody by just gender, race, and sexual orientation, then you're not focusing on the policies. So that's perfectly fine. People may disagree with that, but that's the truth. So if you're just supporting, what are you going to support somebody just because they're gay? You're going to support somebody just because they're black? You're going to support somebody just because they're, just because they're a woman? That's ridiculous. Do you not care about the policies then? Does Marianne Marsh, she doesn't care about the policies? So it says, even though by every measure, every one of these measurements is under attack by Trump, and that jeopardizes every woman, person of color, LGBTQ person, and anyone who chooses to have an abortion. So see this? Again, just like the way that last article that I was reading from that Jeffrey Sonnenfeld was trying to link, Bernie Sanders and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to Donald Trump. This Marianne Marsh is doing the same exact thing, pretending as if because Trump attacks the people of color, LGBTQ women, and those various demographics, that means Trump does it, and Bernie Sanders says you shouldn't vote for people based on those specific like characteristics. That means that Bernie is just like Trump. So it says Sanders' ample war chest, his opening for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez at the Green New Deal Town Hall, a reorganized campaign with new staff and new consultants. None of that is going to fix his problems. It is too late. Oh, and one more thing, Trump wants to run against Sanders. His tweets encouraging Sanders and bemoaning the rigged primary, and this is from earlier in the article too. Bemoaning the rigged Democratic primary of 2016, while he denigrates Biden and Warren, candidates he doesn't want to run against, tells you everything. That alone for Democrats should be game over. So again, this complete hack of a person is making things up and claiming that oh well, it's just too late, it's not going to happen. So Bernie Sanders has no chance because I say so, because I'm a bona fide liar. I'm a liar. I'm a deceiver. I make things up, as I did, claiming that Bernie Sanders didn't support Hillary Clinton in the campaign, which I still can't believe you said that. And it was published. I'm a liar, but I'm going to talk about how it's too late for Bernie Sanders to fix all these problems, because I'm just such an expert. I'm such an expert on how the Democratic Party operates. Talking about, people are going to remember how he's not a Democrat. He's been caucusing with the Democratic Party his entire career. Just because he's an independent doesn't mean people are not going to vote for him. Do you know how many people in this country vote independent or just don't vote because they are independent, so because they don't support either of the parties? 65 million people voted for Hillary Clinton. 62 million voted for Donald Trump in the 2016 election. How many people? You know what percentage that is of people in this country? We have 330 Americans in this country. 330 Americans live in the United States. How many people voted against? 65 million and 62 million. Let's just do the math here. That's 127 million people voted in the 2016 elections. Let's just use that presidential election as an example. What percentage is that of the 330 million people living in this country? That's just over a third of the people in this country. Almost 2/5. Almost 2/5 of people in this country. That's how many people voted in the last presidential election. And I guarantee you, majority of them were not Democrats. They were people that are unsatisfied with the two-party system. They're independents. They're Green Party voters. They're libertarians. They're part of another party, progressive party, whatever. Part of the Socialist Party. Who knows? These are people that they don't support the two-party system. So when you're talking about how, oh my God, Bernie Sanders isn't a Democrat, okay, maybe some Democrats don't care. Did you ever think about that? Maybe some Democrats care about the policies. Maybe some Democrats are sick of the policies that the Democrats are pushing for. Did you ever think about that? 330 people in this country, only 2/5, 40% of those people voted in the last election. And, if you have people talking about how, people like Marianne Marsh over here and other Democratic strategists talking about how Bernie Sanders isn't a real Democrat and all this stuff. These people don't actually care about the fact that they obviously don't care about the fact that people have issues with the two-party system right now. They have an issue with how our political system is corrupted, and the fact that a lot of times both parties seem to be pushing for the same bad policies and seem to be doing the same exact things. And we're sick of that. And people want to fight against that. They want something different. And obviously people like this, they are unaware of the fact that they want somebody like Bernie Sanders. They want somebody, somebody like Bernie Sanders to run against these things so that they don't have to, they don't have to deal with any of that same thing happening again, just the same pattern of the same shitty politicians doing the same exact things that they can't stand. And, and I just want to read the last part here. It says, and it's just like the last few sentences, it says, elections are always about the future, not the past. And the past has caught up with Bernie Sanders. That's why Sanders won't be the Democratic nominee in 2020. So, whatever. I don't know if that, if this person is true. When it comes to, the rigging of the primaries in 2016, I guarantee you they're going to try and do the same thing in 2020. It's going to be a lot harder to kind of do that, I think, because we're so aware of it happening last time that they're going to try and hide a hell of a lot more this time. So, I mean, they can try and hide it. They're going to try and hide it, but and a lot of times when it comes to kind of like how the DNC, rigs things and the different people they have as on the panels and stuff for the DNC, and who's running the DNC, obviously Tom Perez and everything, making the decisions and stuff. It's a big deal because a lot of times we're not going to know about the things that are going on with, there's a couple of things that have come out where they're doing they're going to do a lottery, which is going to choose which people are going to be able to participate in debates. And then there's another person that's going to be involved in the financial aspect of the DNC, who's a little shady and stuff, who's anti-Bernie or something. So, I mean, there's a lot of concerns that are going to happen, but luckily we're a lot of progressives and, Bernie supporters and progressives and stuff. We're keeping a much closer eye on what they're doing, and we are kind of expecting them to rig things, so we're going to definitely be much more aware of it. And when Marianne Marsh says this, I mean, she might be right in the fact that the DNC is going to prevent it from happening. That's what I believe, and I wouldn't be surprised if it happens. So, I mean, get ready for that. That's not hyperbole. That's not conspiracy theories. If it's something they tried to do before, which they did, they're going to definitely try and do it again. And at the end of the day, Marianne Marsh is just, regardless of what she thinks about the primary, obviously she's only saying that Bernie isn't going to win because she's misinformed and she's an idiot and she's a partisan and she's a Dem loyalist. So she's going to say something that's going to go against, God forbid, Bernie Sanders getting in there and changing the Democratic Party's, typical shitty ways. So she's obviously going to be against Bernie Sanders. But at the end of the day, the voters and the people out there, they can't stand what the two parties are doing, let alone Democrats, Republicans, whoever. They can't stand that shit anymore. So they're trying to fight against that, and they want something different. And now that they get something different, these people, these Democratic loyalists, are starting to realize that people are revolting against the Democratic Party. And they're realizing that the popularity of the party is even lower. They realize that they can't beat Trump that easily, so they have to choose somebody like Biden. They have to choose somebody like Warren, I guess, because in a lot of cases, Elizabeth Warren is buckling to establishment pressure. So they love that. They love anybody that's going to give into what the establishment wants. So they're gonna go out there and just talk about how those people are much better than Bernie. So just keep expecting that stuff, and keep an eye out for any kind of rigging and that type of shit that goes on, because it's going to be very, very prevalent in 2020 for sure.